I'm here with Dr. Richard Scott, GP, for another session on medical health topical stuff. Hello, Richard.
And it's good to be back.
So we have been talking through all sorts of things. I've got to be honest, one of my highlights was caffeine because I now drink proper coffee in the morning. But we've touched so many things, and I am delighted. Maybe that's not the right word. We'll see. At today's topic, which all came back from, we do a taste test challenge every Friday. We have 2 or 3 things. I eat them or drink them. Can I tell the difference between them? And we looked at milk. So we had skim milk, and full fat milk. Is there a difference in the taste, smell, texture, all of that? And off the back of that, I can taste the difference. But off the back of that were loads of questions, which I then thought, I'm going to put these to Richard because I have no clue. So milk, Richard, the white stuff that comes from cows mostly is what we think of. But what can you tell us?
Well, that's very kind, and I'm glad you like caffeine things. So yes, it's good to look at stuff that we take in as food, and yeah, milk's a massive subject. So I knew some of the stuff that you asked me, but that also got me. I need to look some of this stuff up as well. So interestingly, my middle daughter Grace is a dietitian. Has a master's in dietetics. So I thought, well, you don't have a dog and wag your own tail. So I put it to her. Look, here's some questions that Andy sent me, about 5 or 6 questions. Send me some stuff, and she very rapidly did. So I looked through 6 papers that she sent me. So what I thought I'd do, Andy, is just look through your questions and go through the answers. And then maybe we'll take it from there. Of this amazing substance that God has designed, milk. And of course, as mammals, mammals comes from mammary glands, the breasts, so we're different as mammals from all the other animals that can't produce milk. But why is it so important, if you like? And what are the alternatives if we have trouble? So what I thought I'd do is look at your questions, which were: is milk too highly processed, becoming acidic and leaching calcium from bones? Hadn't thought of that one before. This is a nice one. Is cow's milk bad for us? Because vegans say it's only for cows. Okay. What is formula milk made of? How does skimmed milk compared with full fat? Not just the taste that you've mentioned, because I'm a full fat man myself, but health-wise, what about the comparison? And then a nice one you added in, which was, should women have a small amount, a sort of small cube-sized amount of cheese every day to help their calcium status? So, for our listeners, I don't know whether your questions on milk, but those are the ones that will come my way. And I'll tackle them through Grace's papers, not necessarily in the order that Andy's asked them, but I'll put it all together. So here we go. Cow's milk and dairy products. Well, the science shows that appropriate consumption, that's important. I remember reading years ago about a footballer who was putting on weight despite training every day, and his manager couldn't understand it. He said to him, what do you eat and drink when you get? And what happened, as soon as he'd done his training, he went home and drank 4 pints of not just full fat, but of the gold topped, the really super creamy dairy. So he'd have 4 pints of milk after training, and no matter how much energy he expended, he put on weight. So that's not appropriate consumption. I've just remembered that one. Anyhow, appropriate consumption of milk and dairy products is beneficial at all ages, over the age of 1. We'll come back to that in a second. For cow's milk, over the age of 1. It improves the nutritional status of primary school kids. It helps hydration, so it gives us fluid, dental and bone health. And it's beneficial in some papers, not all, but in some papers, it's beneficial to physical stature, so you grow taller, and appetite. And it definitely aids the bone mass. So our bones are stronger and thicker. So one of your questions was, is milk too highly processed, cow's milk, becoming acidic, leaching calcium from our bones? Well, no. It helps us to build up calcium in our bones. I never thought of that. I don't know where the listener would have got that one from. It's not highly acidic, and it doesn't leach calcium. It's good for our bones. That's the first one. And now the only exceptions, of course, to cow's milk is if you have either lactose intolerance or a proper milk protein allergy. Which varies. I looked this one up because I see quite a lot of patients who come in with their mums and dads with their small babies, allergy. How common is it? Well, it varies a lot in papers from 0.3%, very low, to 7.5%, very high. So there's a whole range, but we do have 1 or 2% certainly of proper cow's milk protein allergy, and in those situations you can't have cow's milk. But overall, is cow's milk bad? No, it's good. And is it just for cows? No, it's good for us as well. We'll come to breast milk in a second, but I thought I'd just start off with, cow's milk is good for us, and over the age of 1, and we'll come back to that. So not only does it give us good nutrition, but some early work suggests that cow's milk protects against being overweight, because I think it fills us up, against obesity, against diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. There's some thought, but not enough science yet to say it protects against cancer. But it's certainly good against overweight, obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. We're still focusing on cow's milk. We'll come to breast in a moment. But one thing I really wasn't 100% sure about, it's something that we tell our patients, but we don't always remember why. Why can't you have cow's milk before 1? So I looked it up. And the answer is cow's milk lacks vitamin E and some essential fatty acids. So it's good, but it's not perfect. And the balance of the nutrients which are needed in the first year of life is therefore insufficient. It's fine over 1, but not less than 1. It's also a bit high in sodium, potassium, and proteins. So for the real youngsters, infants under 1, not cow's milk. And in fact, it can be harmful under 1. Not only does it lack stuff, but early introduction of cow's milk, i.e. less than 1, can lead to increased chance of milk protein allergy. So you can get a problem with milk. More iron deficient anemia, because it can cause some bleeding from the gastrointestinal tract. So you can get anemic, and type 1 diabetes, because the allergy can attack the pancreatic cells that produce insulin. So definitely don't give your cow's milk to your infants under the age of 1. It lacks a few goodies, and it may even be harmful. So that was good from my point of view. So I can, if ever my patients ask me, "Oh, why is it bad under 1?" Well, now I can tell them. Whereas before I'd say it's bad under 1. 100% sure. Now I am. That was good. So if you can't breastfeed, and we'll come to breastfeed in just a second, you can't give cow's milk under 1, that's when you're going to have to use your formulas. And I'm not going to get into the formulas because that's an incredibly complicated subject. There's pages and pages in my British National Formulary book on different formulas. But formulas are a substitute, obviously, for breast milk under the age of 1. After 1, you can use cow's milk. So that's the sort of simple summary. Now, breastfeeding. God's great design. Not just, of course, for us, but for all mammals. All mammals breastfeed. It's only humans that get into a bit of a state about it sometimes. Other animals have got no choice. The WHO, so the World Health Organization, recommends solely breastfeed for 6 months. Now, this is interesting because when my kids were young, maybe yours, Andy, but we were told, 4 months was enough. And then we begin to wean them, bring in, some other food. And then it was 5 months. And now it's 6 months. Solely breastfeed for 6 months. It's good for hydration. It's good for minerals. It's good for vitamins. Healthy immune system. Protects against infection. And of course, the bonding with the mother. Plus, of course, don't forget, it's cheap. It's free. And it's convenient. You can, breastfeed anyway. You don't have to, sterilize bottles and all the rest of it. So if you can breastfeed, of course, breast is best. There's still no question about that, despite what formula milk producing organizations might say, breast remains best. It's not everybody can, but if you can, it's marvelous for those reasons. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, formula milk and infant formula is the only suitable alternative for the first 6 months on its own. So either breast milk only for 6 months or infant formula only for 6 months. Here was a good thing in my reading. This is interesting. If the mum is a vegan or vegetarian, and she doesn't want her baby to have any sources of meat products within the formula, contact your GP. And then I'm going to have to go through my book and try and find out a formula that doesn't have anything that might upset the vegan or the vegetarian mum. So there we go. I haven't got an easy answer on that one, but I'd find it in my book. I haven't actually come across that issue as yet. So because not all vegan or vegetarians insist on their babies being the same. Anyhow, breast milk or formula milk is the main main drink rather, up to 1 year, and then we can have cow's milk. You can wean at 6 months, but the WHO says breastfeed until 2 years if possible. Now, this would be odd in England. There are a few people that do it. Abroad, it's absolutely standard 2 or 3 years, where it's even acts as a partial contraceptive, not fully effective, but it's partially effective. And of course, it's free. Now, Andy, your question about full fat milk, skimmed milk, semi-skimmed milk. I thought I'd look this one up in terms of youngsters. And the answer is, if you're going to have formula milk, it should be full fat for the first year because of all the benefits. It has more vitamin A than semi-skimmed. Some papers even say don't use semi-skimmed until the age of 2. So full fat is still best. Skimmed milk, not a good idea for kiddies, certainly not until about the age of 5. It just lacks nutrients. Growing kids need nutrients. So, we can starve ourselves. We can have red-topped milk in this country, should we wish, as adults. Don't inflict it on your kids, and certainly not before the age of 5. It's just not good. It's just not good for them. Now, what about, I thought I'd go a bit further, what about goat and sheep's milk?
Yes.
Becoming quite popular. Very similar to cow's milk. So we don't use it in the first year of life. You can afterwards. And their nutrient profiles, how good they are, is pretty similar to cow's milk. Allergenicity, how often do they cause allergies? About the same. So no advantage, no disadvantage. They're a bit more expensive sometimes. It's pretty equivalent. What about soya and other alternatives? As part of a healthy, balanced diet, we've got these plant-based milks now, including soya. I remember our Ukrainian lady that lived with us for 2 years. She was massively into oat milk. So that's another one. You've got soya, you've got almond. She liked that as well. You've got oat milk and other nut milks. Well, they're okay, but then these are not nutritionally equivalent to cow's milk. So goat's milk, sheep's milk, equal to cow's milk. The plant-based ones are not equivalent, not a direct replacement for children. So again, adults for taste, absolutely fine, but not so much for kids. Here's a good one. Rice milk, which I hadn't come across. You can make milk from rice. 100% not under the age of 5 because it may have some arsenic in it. For those of us of a certain age used to reading Agatha Christie books, one of the chief weapons that the bad guys in her books would use was arsenic. Often because you just couldn't taste it, and by the time you realised it was a bit too late. It was universally fatal. Rice milk, for some reason, has some possible arsenic content, so a bad idea. What about your cheese question? Well, you can use cheese. Well, is it any better than milk? No, it's if you don't like milk, use cheese or yogurt. Greek yogurt is very good for us as well. So cheese is no better than milk, but there are people that don't like to drink milk. In which case, take your dairy products as yogurt or as cheese. Again, nutrients are good for bone health, perhaps even some papers say for fertility through improving ovulation. That was a story for Greek yogurt. Too much cheese. We talked about appropriate consumption earlier. Too much cheese is bad for us. It raises your blood pressure because it's very salty, I think. And your cardiovascular risk is raised. It's fatty, it's salty. So small amounts, not too much. And just as a final thing, got me thinking, thank you for your question on milk. This is a great design, of course, that God has made for mammals and us in particular. He also, however, gives us brains. If we can't breastfeed, isn't it great that there are other natural alternatives? And even through our brains, if you like, the chemically designed formulas with their advantages and disadvantages. So I think in all these things, we give praise to God. There we go.
There's a lot in there. The only thing I can talk with any very minor authority on, I use that incredibly loosely, is breastfeeding, only because I worked with midwives for about 3 years delivering talks to new mums to be on breastfeeding. My bit was to come along to about expressed milk, which as a stay-at-home dad, my wife would express. I would then use milk with a cup, not a bottle, and I would talk about why and all that kind of stuff. I say authority in the smallest of ways, so I just added my little bit. It's very, very small. But there's a lot, isn't there? I suppose, in a sense, the vegans are saying potentially, this is one of the listeners said this, is it bad for humans if you drink cow's milk? Well, yes, under one, but not
Correct.
not because
But
it's bad for you, but it's the nutrition that's just not right, is it?
well, and the plant based, you also don't want to give in the, it's certainly not, definitely not in the first 6 months of life, and preferably not, really for the whole first year of life. So I think, and it's interesting, isn't it, that the plant based alternatives are not quite as good as the cow's milk. So yeah, I think one just has to be honest, and this is what the science shows. You may have preferences
Yeah.
that yeah, I'd like to give them all plant based. Well, but don't harm your child. I think is the message, and definitely not in the first year of life.
I'll tell you where the matchbox of cheese bit, that was mine, my only one that I put in,
Oh, right.
was I listened to Radio 2 years and years ago, and there was a female doctor, I forget the name, and she was talking about, I think it was women's health that day, and how can women do better in their, whatever they're doing. But she said one of the things that would be really good is if women took a small matchbox of cheese per day, that would be how much calcium that would be beneficial for them, and a small matchbox, not the big giant ones, we're talking about the little teeny tiny ones, one of those a day, she says it's about right for the calcium for a woman.
And that's good advice. I suppose the only way where it would fail is if she also drank plenty of milk.
Yeah.
In which case she wouldn't need so much of a matchbox. But not many people actually as adults drink milk as such. They might have a little bit in their tea or coffee, and therefore her advice would be very good. Unless you're drinking a pint, and preferably not a footballer I mentioned earlier, drinking 4 pints.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot
The
of milk.
gold, that's that full cream as well. That's, oh wow.
He really was abusing his body, and he thought he was doing a good thing. Pointed out, hang on a second, that's an awful lot.
Too much of anything is not good, though. I mean, off topic, but I remember meeting a couple who were enormous, and they'd been told by their doctor, you're not eating enough fruit, you need to eat much more fruit and vegetables to be healthy. And they would eat so much fruit, the doctor was then saying, what you're basically now eating is just so much sugar because you've gone sort of way past to an extreme. It was 4 pints of full cream milk, effectively, but with fruit, they ate so much fruit. It was just mad.
And there used to be a thing. I remember one of the things we learned at medical school was, carrots are good, help you, see in the dark. But there's a condition called carotenemia, and that would happen, and the people were stuffing carrots, like there was no tomorrow, and actually you become orange. It's harmful to you. And again, come on, just one carrot a day would be quite sufficient should you wish to, or even a carrot a week probably. But people can take things to excess. So yeah, let's be smart.
I'll tell you one that you mentioned, which I thought, I'm going to go more into that one. Hydration. Now, I always sort of thought that if you're really, really thirsty, the best thing you can drink is not water, but milk. I don't know where that came from, but because sometimes you drink water and you think, I'm still thirsty. And sometimes the only thing I can drink that will actually do anything to make me feel like I've just drunk something is a little glass of milk. So is that in any way right, or am I just off my head?
I think that's personal preference. I certainly remember when I craved milk. The one time I did the London Marathon, which practically killed me, and I was hungry and thirsty, and they give you these tiny sort of quarter pint sachets of milk, and I had about 3 or 4 of them. I wanted more because what I wanted was fluid, but also some food. And of course, that's where milk is such a brilliant substance, isn't it? But no, I think that otherwise it's a taste thing.
We do have now. In the UK, it's blue, which is, I suppose, it's full fat. None of the fat's been taken out, not added in. But that's what we drink. That's the bottles we buy now. Because in my head, I think, if it's full fat milk, it's healthy because at least it's come from a cow. Whereas other fat you can get, who knows what it is, but at least if it's milk,
it's been more processed, of course, to take that out. I understand why people do, and if you have a problem with high cholesterol or other forms of your lipids that are high, yes, okay, I understand that. Personally, I'm not a great fan of skimmed milk. It's basically white water to my taste. Semi-skimmed is okay, but my preference is for the blue topped one. But yeah, if you have medical conditions requiring you to have less fat, fair enough. Just don't give it to your kids under 1.
I'm pretty sure. On the WHO guidance of not weaning, so that's not giving your child solid food until 6 months. I'm almost certain that when we had Stephen, my first, who's 20, it was much less than it was when we had Peter. And I thought, I don't care what the WHO said. It was good enough for Stephen. I'm not changing now. Not because I'm being stupid, but you
Well,
know what?
in my life, it's definitely gone up from 4 months to 5 months, and currently to 6 months.
Yeah.
And I remember offering our first grandson. He was becoming desperate at 5 months, and Grace, my dietitian daughter, said, "But the guidelines say 6 months now." And suddenly he was presented with the opportunity to have peanut butter, and literally both hands were cramming it in. Not peanut butter, a banana, not peanut butter, a banana. And both hands were cramming it in. And I said, I think he's ready.
Well, the thing is, 6 months. We're not talking about 5 months, 30 days, and then that's it. They're okay now because, of course, it's going to be a range. We're talking about averages here. But I tell you, the question I had was, I had heard, is the WHO thing, because obviously it's the World Health Organization, is that more to do because they're looking at developing countries which have got issues of hygiene and all the rest of it? Are they sort of lumping it all together, or is that something I've misheard?
That's a very good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. Bearing in mind that they're recommending, particularly in poor countries, that people breastfeed till the
Yeah.
age of 2. Why can't you bring in food earlier? There is an allergy aspect to it. So if we bring it in too early, there's a danger of allergy. But yeah, it was fine at 4 months in those days. Probably still is, but the guidelines say now 6 months.
I'm not going to conflict that, but it was just when I remember Peter, there was no way he was getting to 6 months. There was no way on this planet.
Indeed, indeed. And I personally think, let's split the difference and go for 5 months.
I think so many children, they kind of know what they need and what they don't want, and we just need to listen to ourselves. Just not a lot. We need to look at guidance, but speak to your GP. But I think sometimes the answer's sort of in front of us. And for him, drooling, reaching out for food, I think this is a pretty good sign. He's ready for more now.
His body is saying, "Come on, now's the time."
Yeah, give me something solid. So we have banana, which is the classic first one, isn't it? There's a lot in there. I just think, wow, what's God given us that is so amazing? Cow milk, goat milk, sheep milk, the same. I think buffalo as well, because they do buffalo meat, buffalo milk. I don't know what that's like. I think buffalo meat is supposed to be quite good, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's slightly gamier flavour. Yeah. As sort of posh cows in many ways, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a lot. Greek yogurt. Yeah. Interestingly, I would never have thought that was to do with calcium at all. That would, I don't know, with the word Greek, I just think, well, it's not calcium, is it?
Yeah, you have to think what's in the yogurt.
Yeah, I mean, I know yogurt, but I was just thinking Greek yogurt, so it's not yogurt. I don't know. This is what we have you to ask questions to. But here's one that really was fascinating. If you give your children under 1 much earlier, then you can cause bigger problems later with issues of anemia, which is iron deficiency, isn't it? Milk allergies and type 1 diabetes. If you give them cow's milk too young, you can create a propensity for future problems. But also fascinating, if you do it right, then you can help prevent things like obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease.
Isn't the body, in some ways, the body can be a bit particular. And this is why people study. This is why science is important. Actually, don't because if you just had the information saying, "Oh, if you give the cow's milk too early, you might get type 1 diabetes." Oh, let's not give cow's milk at all. No. There are benefits as well. So you've got to look at things in the round, really, both pros and the cons.
I do remember hearing somebody once say, well, if you have to sterilize the nipple on a bottle for formula milk, don't you need to sterilize the woman's nipple? And it was just no.
You mean boil it to 100 degrees? I don't think so.
No, you don't need to do that. But the thing is, misinformation. If you don't know, you don't know. And it makes sense. Well, if you sterilize that, don't you sterilize this? And logically, that makes sense. But of course, there's a bit more going on.
Sure. God's designed the women's nipples a bit different.
Absolutely. I love this. I mean, as I say, I spent 3 years, new mums to be, talking about using express milk, why you don't use a bottle, because you can get nipple confusion, which is the bit I actually have some very small minor knowledge on. So we used to cup feed, so our boys were all drinking from little tinny cups, so they've never had a bottle, which was better because then you don't get confusion, which can come later. So I'm not going to bore you, but that's the bit I do a little bit on. But it was really encouraging that all these women were. This was in Telford in Shropshire, where there was a massive it was a very different statistic. In Telford, Shropshire, the number of women breastfeeding was way lower than the rest of the country, and one of the reasons that maybe to do this is that some of the people who were working for the council were going around saying, "Oh, just bottle feed, it's easier." And I was at a meeting when they said that, and the midwife who was sat next to me, well, she got off the ceiling eventually. Why not? ever. They
It's
don't say
terrible.
that.
It's terrible advice. You think you're doing the right thing to make life easier for women, but it's really thoughtless.
Yeah. But they transformed it, and it was great that I could be a really small part of that. And they saw the levels come up, and it was good. But this is the thing about misinformation, isn't it? We have a piece of information,
Mm.
and if we misapply it, like it's bad for you, well, it may not be good for you under one, but it's not bad for you exactly the same, is it?
That's very important. Well done for your work. Even if it's only a small amount, well done.
I
Think
loved it.
people have got the message now. I mean, I think yes, of course. There's you might think it's easier not to breastfeed, but actually all the faff with all the bottle feeding and etc. And there's cost to the NHS if you get it on prescription, cost to you if you buy it. There's all these things. Breast. There's no doubt breast is best.
I could talk for quite a long time, and I used to, and I'm not going to do that. Right. So milk is basically good for you, but not when you're really, really young. But as you get a little bit older, like one, then it becomes a really, really good source of calcium, which is good for the bones.
Correct. Mm.
Richard, thank you. I love these. I mean, all those questions. The only one that was mine was the matchbox of cheese because I heard it from a radio doctor years and years ago.
Well, you've taught me something there. That's a nice way of thinking about how much cheese an adult woman needs. Mm.
I just thought it was really good. She said women need calcium slightly more than men. Not men don't need it, but just a little bit more. But how much do you take? Well, small matchbox. That's the sort of size.
When women are breastfeeding, they're losing a bit of calcium in the milk. So actually, even more reason to have a little bit extra.
Yeah, no, I like milk, and I definitely could taste a difference. Skim milk with no fat. It's like you say, it's white water, isn't it? What's the point? Just stick water in your coffee; it's quicker. Richard, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
If you've got any topical issues you've seen in the news and you're thinking, I don't know what this is all about, then you can put those questions to me and I'll put them to Richard for you. Email those questions to hello@pure247radio.org. Hello@pure247radio.org. Dr. Richard Scott, GP, thank you, sir.
A pleasure. Thank you, Andy.